Welcome to Season 5 of the Founders Only podcast, where we uncover the pivotal trials and triumphs and the stories of great founders, delivering actionable advice on how to be the leader of the pack. Today, I am so excited to welcome David Owasi, the founder of OutreachGenius.ai. David has a knack for blending marketing strategies with automation and AI and crafting ingenious solutions for businesses aiming to attract more clients and elevate their sales. His entrepreneurial spirit and emphasis on emotional intelligence set him apart and make him a standout figure in driving business growth. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Mia. It's a pleasure to be on here.
Yes, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. And we're going to jump right in. And I want to ask, can you tell me about the journey to becoming the founder of Outreach Genius?
It's been a long journey, but a fun and adventurous one. It's a funny thing, I actually wrote a song about this. It's just kind of funny. And the song goes, it began with a dream to build like Mr. Gates. So growing up, I've always, admired Bill Gates and Steve Jobs as the legends in the game. They started with writing codes, HTML like the greats. So I've always wanted to, I've always thought that writing codes was something magical. You can write some codes and it will do something for you in perpetuity. So for me, I studied computer science. That was my background from the university. And the whole goal for me was always, how do I use technology to create a product, something that many people can use. So that has always been my passion. But I was not able to arrive here. I've had many iterations, different business ideas I've tried. But one thing that always come back as a theme is building something that is useful, that is actually helpful to people. Not something that is just cool or flashy, but something that actually helps people solve problems. And when I came into the marketing world, I realized that there's a whole lot of problems in marketing, and it's a problem that's never going to go away. Businesses will always have a need to sell their stuff, and the strategies, the tactics, depending on technologies, depending on market, will always change. So for me, I found my passion here, where I was able to combine my love for computers and technology and just old-fashioned sales and marketing. And that's how Outreach Genius came to be over the last couple of years, blending all of those experiences. So there you go.
So let's unpack that a little bit more and tell me really the story of when you had that light bulb moment that would become Outreach Genius. So tell me where you were, kind of tell me the story about where you were, what was happening in your life, what was happening in the market, or what was the kind of the trigger or the catalyst that you said, oh, I need to build this, and this is what it needs to be and do?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I started out as a business coach. So I'd ran some businesses while I was in university. It was actually a boring business, painting houses, but it was a good business as well. It didn't require too much technical expertise. You just needed to know how to do a decent job. So I started doing that, and I decided I love business from there. And then once I finished university, I decided I didn't want to do that business anymore. I wanted to evolve and do something in the online space. So I started out as a business coach, just from demand, people asking me, hey, David, you run a successful business. Can you help with my marketing, help with my sales? So I was in some side gig consulting, and I had a full-time job at the time, consulting for a recruitment company. And then the pandemic hit, and then my company was like, sorry, we always said you're family, but now you're no longer family because of pandemic, whatever. So at that time, I had other options to do other jobs, where I decided I'm just going to go all in into business. It was almost like a welcomed situation at the time. It was inconvenient, but it was still welcome, because I was like, now at least I'm being forced to go back full time into entrepreneurship. So I started out helping businesses generate leads, and all the business I was coaching, lead generation was the biggest problem they were facing. So I was forced to try and help them by generating leads. I mean, that was what they were paying me for. And then I realized that there was a whole opportunity out here to really build something here and to use my approach, growth marketing approach, looking at automation, coding, software to solve those problems. And that's how I started out. Obviously, I didn't start building my own software first. I was looking at what's available in the market right now. How can I combine all these tools? And it was a lot of fun for me learning, experimenting with my clients. And eventually we had to evolve into an agency because there's only so much you can do in a one-on-one setting. So in the agency, I could hire people and then we could deliver the services of lead generation, typically focus more on the B2B side, the LinkedIn side, email side. And I learned a lot, but I also saw a lot of gaps in the market. Based on things, I was like, if I could build mine, I would actually want to do this and do this and do this and do that. And that is just how things evolved. I was able to generate enough revenue to start hiring engineers and to start building things together. And then, of course, AI craze came around a couple years ago, and that was just perfect timing for me because I'd already built all the foundation and infrastructures of a team, of an engineering team, of a co-founder that were able to just bring in the whole AI elements. We just took things to the next level. So it's been a fun journey over the last couple of years, but I'm very excited about this space.
And so you mentioned that there were some, your initial thought was, let me see what's in the market. Let me look at some other solutions to solve my customer's problem, which, by the way, was the problem leads or was the problem qualified leads at the time? When you were helping your customers, were they mostly customers who had leads but the quality was bad, or were they really just struggling to build brand awareness and get anybody to raise their hand for their service at the time?
So it was really booked appointment. So they didn't have a consistent, reliable way of getting somebody who is interested in their service. So to your question, qualified lead, to jump on a call with them on a consistent basis where they can say, every week I go in, every week knowing that this system, whatever that system will be, will generate 5, 6, 7 calls for me. And then I can go in there and do my thing and generate revenue. Most of those clients I work with, they know how to sell their product. They're passionate, they're very good at it, but they didn't have the infrastructure of mechanism that could predictably, in a cost effective way, generate those appointments for them. So that was what the biggest problem was.
Okay. And so you're looking at these other solutions in the marketplace and you discover what gaps. What were the gaps that you felt you needed to fill with your specific product?
So most of the solutions were the classic traditional solutions everyone knows, either paid ads, which works, but it's very expensive, and a lot of new business owners can't afford it, and frankly can't do it well because there's a lot of nuance to it. And then the second one will be things like SEO and content, and those work, but at times it just takes a lot of time. Like if you want a business tomorrow, SEO is like a 5-year game plan, a 2-year game plan. So a lot of the solutions in the market worked, but for the kind of clients I was working with, it was either too expensive for them, or it was just not going to deliver the result immediately as they wanted. So for me, the question was, how can I provide a solution that is not as expensive and can deliver immediate solutions right now, like tomorrow they can start seeing some result, and doesn't involve like something too extremely technical to set up. And that is where I started to discover things like automation. How can you do automated LinkedIn outreach, where you build a list of ideal audience and start using automation to begin conversations with them, and then you have a virtual assistant come in and just respond for you and convert them into a meeting for you, clock in. Like it's just a constant cycle of new conversations starting every day. And then same thing with email, same thing with Facebook, same thing with Instagram. So I was able to develop very clever and interesting automated strategies that you could almost like let it start by itself, and you just need one person really having those high level conversations to turn them into meetings. So that was the beginning of everything.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So now let's rewind the clock and tell me who David Owasi was before Outreach Genius and even before becoming an entrepreneur. So tell me about your upbringing, where you're from, and that story.
Of course, I was born in Nigeria, so home of jollof rice and Afro music. And I grew up in Nigeria up until I was 17, before my family moved to North America in Canada, which I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Grew up in a very, very poor background. It was very challenging sometimes to find food to eat, 3 square meal. My parents were absolutely the best people in the world. They did everything they can, but of course, when you're poor, you're poor. It's just one of those realities. So I came from a very disadvantaged background, and my parents did all their very best to provide us with education and books. My mom particularly exposed me to a lot of books growing up, and I remember just reading and reading and reading and reading growing up, and that allowed me to, number one, change the way I thought about what was normal. All the poverty around me felt not normal. I just would not settle for it because I was reading about all the great entrepreneurs and great characters in history, and I was like, if they can do it, then I certainly can do it. So that really helped me. Sort of, my mindset was really critical at that point in time, and I did pretty okay at school. I was able to finish. I was able to take an exam that was two grades above me, and I was able to get into university when I was 14. So I started studying science, microbiology science, which is not the most fun thing to study, but that was what I got into study in Nigeria at the time. But that allowed me to go into a very matured environment when I was 14, and all of my colleagues were like in their 20s. So that accelerated my level of maturity, my level of growth personally. I was forced to. And when I came to Canada at 17, I was like a full, matured, really, go getter kind of guy. I knew exactly what I wanted. I'd already seen how hard life could be. I was very focused. I knew exactly what I was going to go for. So when I came to Canada, started studying computer science, but I knew business was my thing. And from there, it was just about how can I get my first business started. So in second year of university, my opportunity came. I started my first company, painting houses. We did almost about seven figures throughout my university. That paid for all of my university tuition, helped support my family in some way. So that was kind of like the journey from poverty to coming to Canada to establishing myself, and that was the foundation and I used to like really do some of the cool stuff I'm doing today.
How did you land on entrepreneurship and computer science? You mentioned earlier that Bill Gates was one of your um,
Inspiration.
inspirations, yes. And so when did that happen? Was it through books, or was it through the media, or kind of how did you say, I think the path for me is not only to be in business rather than, what is very common for when people immigrate to either the United States or Canada. They think, okay, let me get a job in computer science and let me follow that path. Maybe I'll work for Microsoft and maybe one day I'll build something for myself. But it sounds like, and I know this story very well as it's similar to mine, but it sounds like you knew that building something for yourself was the path for you. So when did that happen?
So reading books was my exposition to the whole world of entrepreneurship. So I read all the books I could get my hands on, everything from Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Silicon Valley at the time. But I really learned the concept of leverage very early on in my life, and I understood the four levers of leverage: labor, capital, code, and media. And I understood that labor, which is hiring people, was pretty much out of my grasp. I didn't have money to hire anybody. Capital, I didn't have any connections to go raise any money. But the last two forms of leverage, which was media, so creating content, still very early on at that time, so I really didn't have the skill. But the one thing I knew I could control was code. I knew that there was no barrier for me to write code. I could go learn how to write code. I remember writing my first HTML code at like 15 in Nigeria, and I was like just marveled at the point of I pressed a few things and my whole desktop just changed. I was just hooked from there, and it was just a matter of, okay, if I can do this, I can build a service that can allow people to get some sort of outcome using this. And the question was, what service are you going to build? And that became the hardest thing. So for me, it was very, very clear from early on, if you want to build something that could generate a million x outcome, you can't hard work or brute force your way into it. You've got to find a lever that will allow you to really be able to get that 100x, 1000x outcome. So that's for me how computer science came into play. And of course, when you read, of course, who are the richest people in the world? What are they doing? Then of course you realize that most of the richest people in the world, they somehow have their hands in software and technology. So for me, it was just very, very clear. If you want to be rich, because I was always very motivated to be rich for myself, for my family, to get us out of this generational to build generational wealth. And if I want to get out of the poverty that has been plaguing my family for generations on end, I need to literally think outside the box. And code for me was just a very, very clear. And I had some aptitude and some understanding of coding, and also I had an unshakable and undeniable belief in myself. I don't know how I got that belief, but I just knew that if I can bet on myself, I will be fine. And all I just need to do is find ways to bet on myself and put myself in a position where I'm forced to then figure it out, sink or swim. And I knew I'll always sink, I always swim, because I've had the experience of being put in a very difficult environment from as long as I can remember. When I was in university in Nigeria, I was 14. I was put in a really crazy world of by myself, and somehow I was bullied. I was beat up many times. I had all these crazy experiences, but somehow I figured it out and I was stronger for it. And I'm like, if I put myself in a situation where I'm either gonna sink or swim, I'm gonna figure out a way to swim. So that's kind of what I do always. I put myself in those situations all the time, and it just expands my definition of what I can do. And it's very exciting for me to be like, okay, let's see how David is going to thrive in this situation. And every time I put myself in that situation, I always figure out a way, and that fuels even my sense of belief even more. So that has been sort of my journey.
So, reflecting back on your childhood, what was
Mhm.
one moment or experience that you believe was pivotal in shaping the person you are today? Um, so, you've mentioned starting school very young. So, I'm sure
Mhm.
that that was a moment. But was there any specific moment um, that really kind of changed who you were? Was there a moment that you can remember?
So I've always had this huge belief in myself and in my being special. I don't know why. Actually, it was my mom. My mom brainwashed me
Mm,
into believing that I was special. And she would tell me, you were special, you're built for great things. Now, whether or not that impacted things, I just felt this sense of confidence. Mom said I'm special. Dad says I'm special. So I must be special. And if what I'm doing is not special, then the problem is me not taking in this belief that my parents have in me. So I took that, I brainwashed myself in that, and ran away with it. And the funny thing is that I started to do things that someone who thinks they're special will do. And then I started to get the results that proved to me that maybe I am special here. And that reinforced my belief to even do more things. And that becomes a vicious cycle of positivity. So that led to me becoming school president when I was the youngest in my class. That led to me taking exams that were 2 grades above of me. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe they're onto something here. Maybe I'm indeed special. And of course, I got failure every now and then, but I still felt that I've had a lot of success too, more success than many of my peers. So there must be some truth to me being special,
yeah.
and I just ran away with that. So my mom introducing me to books to really help me think outside of my immediate environment and all the people I grew up with who had a whole poverty, limited mindset, and then her just like pumping into my head how special and amazing I am, and I just like took that and believe in that and put in the work that just compounded on that, and that reinforced my belief over and over again. So I would say those early moments from my childhood were very pivotal in me getting my sense of belief in my abilities.
Is there anything in your life so far
Mhm.
that if it wouldn't have happened, that you feel would have greatly, greatly changed your life?
Moving to North America was a game changer. It was everything. Because, yes, I had a lot of belief, I had a lot of abilities, a lot of energy growing up in Nigeria, but the opportunities were just not there. And coming to Canada, it was just like, wow, a whole new world of opportunities. Whatever it is you wanted to do was possible. All you just had to do was focus your attention on whatever it is you wanted to do. And for me, I can't believe other people that come to North America and don't make something out of themselves. I'm like, you are sitting on a gold mine. Anything you want to do is very possible here. You can go find a job, use that to make money, use that money to reinvest in the business. There's just so much you can do. You're only limited by your ambition and by your drive and by your willingness to put in the work. So coming to North America was a game changer. Not only did I get access access to all the best technologies I wanted to. And not only did I get access to the best education I wanted to, I also got access to people who are doing what I wanted to do already. In Nigeria, growing up, especially from my background where I grew up, it would have been impossible to even be able to like meet somebody who remotely is close to doing what it is I want to do. And that would have been a huge challenge, not insurmountable, but very much more difficult. But come to Canada, I just needed to sign up for the right events. I needed to just go to the right place. And all these entrepreneurs were all over there. And I could talk to them, ask them questions, ask them to mentor me. And for me, come to Canada was a game changer for me.
How long did you know before you came to North America or Canada? How long did you know that you were coming? So, what what was the day like when you found out that you were coming to North America?
So my parents were always very clear because they knew that nothing was gonna get better in Nigeria from for them. Like we were like below middle class, no jobs. My mom was a nurse, but her the hospital she was working at, it was part of a larger company. It got shut down, and they all lost their job. There was no compensation for them for like years. She couldn't get a replacement job. It was horrible. And same thing with my dad. There was just no. He was only we were basically living on the income he was making, so I which was not very much as well. So it was very clear from my parents that we have to figure out a way to get ourselves out of this country, and it was like a 6, 7, 8 year process of trying different countries, which one would work well for us. We tried the UK, that didn't work out. We tried, I think that was at a point we were trying Australia, we were trying Ireland, and it just nothing was working out. And Canada was just became perfect because we had some family friends out here, and it just made a lot more sense from the kind of program we were coming. And also, my parents were very worried. They didn't just want to take us to a country and then we're having to like struggle to be, legal. Like they would not do something like they would not put us in that situation. So they were very, very patient to their credits, waited for the right opportunity with the right program. Because now I'm a Canadian citizen, and that makes things so much easier in terms I can access everything now versus struggling to just be like a legal, like that was not going to be an option. So when I learned that our application was approved, I mean my next worry was, can we actually afford the tickets, the plane ticket? That was my initial worry, but I was so overjoyed. I was very excited because I knew that my life was about to change, and because of the belief I had in myself, because of all the abilities I knew I had, I just knew that I just needed an opportunity. I needed an opportunity and a chance, and this was that chance. So it was very exciting for us. And I just remembered, on that plane, I was like telling myself, "Your life is going to change forever right now. This is the next thing, and the world will know you in a few years." And that was just a really, really exciting time, an exciting feeling. I still can't forget that. May 3rd, 2011. That's when I came to Canada.
That is a beautiful story. I love that. I love that so much. So, David, what's your superpower?
My superpower, that's a very good question. As an entrepreneur, I have learned that my superpower is my neurodivergence. So I'm able to hold many conflicting thoughts at the same time without casting judgments. And I believe in entrepreneurship and in business, oftentimes one answer is not the answer. Usually it's many things, and you have to like navigate your path. And this might be true, and this is also true at the same time, and that is also true at the same time. And being able to be like, okay, what are the nuances around all those things? And I find that I'm very, very comfortable holding and balancing multiple things at the same time that can be conflicting without being forced to have to choose one. Now, sometimes that is a weakness actually, because sometimes you have to focus on one thing and just go one thing. But I think if you're thinking big as an entrepreneur, you have to be comfortable with the chaos of different things coming at you and not having to say no because you're too overwhelmed. So I'm very good dealing with complexity and dealing with like a lot of things. And then the second thing is consuming information. I think that I have just a voracious appetite to learn, and I love to learn for the sake of learning. Like I would just learn all sorts of weird things because I enjoy that process. And the last thing is, ego is the enemy. I have no ego at all. Anyone can teach me. My employees know this. it's all about the idea. It's not about who's right. David could come up with dumbest idea, and they're fine calling me out on that. It's all about the purity of the idea. What helps us get closer to our goal. So my team, everyone is very comfortable being vocal in our team meetings, call each other out, call me out, me calling them out. It's all about how is this helping us get to our goal. So I'm always learning from my team, learning from my employees, learning from my clients, and I have no ego at all. And I think I don't consider my own pride or my own ego associated with an outcome. The outcome is the outcome, and I am just like making sure that both of those are very independent. So just to recap, that so those are some of the things that I would say are my superpowers: holding conflicting thoughts and ideas and the complexity of them without attaching judgment to them, and then no ego, and then voraciously learning and just absorbing as much information as I can. Those are some of my superpowers.
Awesome. A lot of things you're mentioning are common. I hear them so many times with very successful entrepreneurs. So I want to talk, and we're going to come back to it. I know that emotional intelligence is something that you have mentioned in the past, or that I read about you, and I want to talk about that too. Um, and also want to unpack. I think that your neurodivergence might really be, and I think because it's the first one you said, that there's probably even more to that that is really a superpower for you. Um, you're a family man, right?
I am.
How does your neurodivergence and your multitasking ability from a business standpoint, how has that impacted your ability to balance your life? As someone who is also a family person who has a business, it has been one of my bigger challenges to be able to balance and show up and be present whenever I'm needed with my family and the people that I love, while simultaneously showing up and carrying the business sometimes. So how has that played out for you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And the first thing is to have a supportive and understanding partner who understand what they've signed up for. And there's very clear communication about what I have signed up for. And there's an alignment of the mission, the vision, the goal. So my wife, I'm very, very grateful to have her. She believes wholly and fully in the mission. And she understands that even though I care and I love my family, there will just be some times where David is just in his own world, he's just gonna go crazy. And she understands that. But also she understands that David can't do that all the time. And I have to sometimes, a lot of times, actually budget time for family, to spend time with family. So basically, the idea is that she doesn't expect a normal life, and she's fine with that. But she does expect that whenever I put time aside for family, that there's no distractions, there are no phones, I'm fully present, I'm fully engaged, and that is a struggle for me sometimes. But she has the permission, and that's kind of how it works. She has the permission to call me out anytime. If there's time is set aside for family, and there's always problems to think about. There's always something going on as a business owner, and she has the permission without me being mad or taking offense to, like, David, snap out of it. It's time for family right now. And I said, please call me at any time I'm like that, because as entrepreneurs, we're just wired to always think about the problem. So most times, so it's all about setting aside time intentionally to spend time with family. I have two kids, and to be there at bedtime, to be there present with them, even though there's a whole bunch of things that needs to be done, and having the permission to always be called out when I'm not living up to the expectations that I have set, and I try my best to balance. But also at the same time, balance is also a tricky word for entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurship by its definition is being extreme. I mean, it's crazy people who decide to take on this risk, take on all these responsibilities. So I struggle with the word balance, because we are not meant to be balanced, at least in the initial phase. And it's okay We don't have to shy away from that. That's just what we've signed up for. And I think what we need to do as entrepreneurs is just be very, very, very clear to the people around us and say, this is what I signed up for. If you want to go on this journey with me and be in my circle, this is what you can expect. Now, this doesn't mean I'm going to be this way 100% of the time, but whenever that 10, 15% of time I spend with you, I'm going to be fully with you. And you have the permission to call me out to like, tell me to F up if I'm not being that present with you at that particular point in time. But you can't expect me to be like the average 9 to 5 person, and go, hang out every evening. I'm not gonna do that. But once I choose to hang out with you and I choose to spend time with you, you will get my full attention. And just being very clear about that, and then everyone is gonna be fine with that. And if they're not fine with that, then sorry, it doesn't look like we're gonna be a fit at this point. And just being clear about that. So it's all about communication, really.
I love that. That was definitely a golden nugget there. That was definitely a golden nugget there. So that's a perfect segue for my next question, because what you're talking about in terms of creating the opportunities for you to have time and budget time, as you said, with the other responsibilities in your life that are important to you and the other priorities in your life, that requires freedom, right? So you mentioned AI as a necessity for personal freedom. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I believe that AI is here to help us do one thing better than at any point in history, to imagine and create our best life. And what does that really mean? Well, it means that as people, entrepreneurs, 9 to 5 regular people, there are all these pesky tasks that we have to do in our lives. And, some of those tasks involve the mundane things, reading our emails, doing shopping, just the regular things that takes a whole bunch of our time. And then there's some of the higher level tasks that require a lot more skill and that require a lot more expertise. And I believe that depending on where you are on your technological level of being comfortable with technology, AI, it has the ability to help us buy back our time by automating some of those tasks that really take up a lot of those times. So for example, here's how I've used AI in my own business. So as a founder, one of my key responsibilities is going out and doing lots of sales calls. And because of the nature of our work, I have to meet with very 7-figure CEOs of 7, 8, 9, 10-figure companies. So those are very, very impressive individuals. You don't want to show up to the call unprepared. You really want to do as good of a job as possible. And for me to be able to be prepared for those calls, it means that I have to spend hours researching them, looking at all the podcasts they've been on, learning about what awards they've been on, just so I can show up to the call feeling like, wow, this guy really looked me up. This guy knows me well. He knows my business well. So whatever pitch I'm making to them is very customized to them and their unique scenarios. And this has worked very well for me because that's how allowed us to close a lot of deals. But the problem is that it takes a lot of time to do that, so much time. So this is where AI came into play. What we did was my team would build an AI software that if I give it a LinkedIn profile, it will scrape all the internet. Well, the first thing is it will go to LinkedIn and find out what's true about this person, their picture, their work history, their location, and then it will go into the internet and find every possible thing about this person online. Blogs, articles, news mention, podcasts, and the AI will then summarize all of that. And in terms of how you make sure it's accurate is if there's an article or content or a video piece, it will look at the video or the picture associated with that article and say how likely is this video compared to what we know to be true about this person. So that way, if there's a duplicate of name, it's actually the same person. So you use image recognition, AI software, and then they will do something we call contextual matching, where we'll look at the whole article that was written about John Doe and say how likely, based on what we know about John Doe, is this article about them, and it gives like a score, a ranking. So we built the software now that I just click one button, it gives me all of the intelligence I need to know about John. I don't have to spend hours and hours listening to podcasts that they were on, and I can go into the call and say, John, I love what you said in that podcast where you said this, and that, and they're like, wow, no one is actually taking the time to listen to that podcast. I did not listen to it, but it was the AI that did all that job for me. So this is just one small way of how AI can allow us to buy back hard time. And that time, instead of me spending hours and hours researching, I can spend it focus on my product. I can spend it focus on other tasks that moves me closer to my goal. So that's how AI is here to help us, rethink how we do our work, for one singular reason though, to buy back our time. And then you can spend that time doing whatever it is you want. Spend time with family, spend time working on other areas of leveraging your business. And that's how I think about AI.
Okay. Is there any other ways that someone who's new to AI can start to integrate AI into their daily mundane tasks as a business owner that you can think of that they could make more efficient by using just like ChatGPT or something like that?
Absolutely. So here's an exercise I go through with my clients, and I've been kind of doing a little bit of consulting with some my friends mostly, frankly. But this is something maybe I will expand out where people come to me and say, "Hey, David, you're using AI to improve and optimize your workflow. How can I use it to improve my own workflow?" And we go through an exercise, and the exercise is that first, over like a period of 4 weeks, a whole month, I get them to write out every 15 minutes in their workday what they're doing with their time. So I'm doing research, I'm planning my content, blah, blah, and we do an audit of their time. What are you actually spending your time doing? And now, these once we kind of do the audits, we can usually break out the activities into like 4 areas. So the first area would be things that they could delegate to someone else. So, or they could delegate to an AI. So it could be just things that they're just constantly doing all the time. Maybe it's research, maybe it's writing copy, maybe it's just things that are low activities, but it doesn't bring them joy, it doesn't bring them energy at all, and it doesn't even make them as much money. It's not as impactful. So those are the first things we try and delegate, or we try to get AI to do it for them. And then the next higher level tasks are things that brings them a lot of money, but they still don't love doing it. So this could be things like creating, writing to sales calls, for example, or doing research for their sales call. It brings them a lot of money, but they absolutely hate doing that. And then we start looking at all those activities. Okay, we've delegated all of the low task things that doesn't generate too much money for you. Done. This next level of things that generate you a lot of money but doesn't bring joy to your life because you hate them, but you have to do them because they bring money. How many of those things can we use AI to automate? How many of those things can we bring in experts for you to replace? And then we kind of go through all of those activities in that we've documented, and we're just kind of like breaking things into those two categories and then trying to decide which of those things we delegate to AI. And there are tons of tools out there. If you know what you want to automate, that's the most important thing. Then it's very easy to go actually find the tools, and you can use ChatGPT, you can use a combination of ChatGPT and other tools, and there's like 10 hundreds of tools coming out every day to do all sorts of things. But it begins by understanding what you're doing with your time, and then understanding, based on what I'm doing with my time, which of these brings me joy, which of these I drag to my energy, and then breaking that into both of those camps, and then just start to delegate as much of those away, and then you buy back your time. So that's typically the framework that I use and I go through. If you're starting out and trying to figure out how can I even use AI in my workflow, audit your time, break that into those two categories, and then start delegating away.
Great. I love that. I love that framework. So let's talk about marketing for Outreach Genius. So, what is the primary marketing channel for Outreach Genius? As a SaaS founder, I want to know, how are you generating leads for your SaaS?
Great question. So I think about it from the opposite side, and Charlie Munger always talks about invert, 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 meaning that when you think about problems, there are many ways to do something, but there are many ways that will absolutely guarantee you're not getting your outcome. And I always like to think of what's that first before I start thinking of all the multitude of things that I could do. So one of the things that I focus on is, yes, you can do all the outreach. There are lots of strategies, and we can do them. We can do paid ads, you can do automation, you can do email, you can do content, all those things you can do. But one thing I focus on is, out of all those activities you're doing, people are probably coming to your website. How do you identify those people who are already saying, somehow I've heard about you, somehow I think that what you're saying makes sense and resonate with me, and then I'm coming to your website to visit you. Most companies, they ignore those visitors. They don't do anything with that because they don't have a system. And in Atomic Habits, the writer talks about how we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And what we're building at Outreach Genius is a way to help you maximize all of those leads that are coming in, all of those visitors that are coming in. So what Outreach Genius does really is we have a small pixel, we insert it into your website, and it's built off of a database of over 300 million B2B and B2C prospects. We can identify those individuals coming to your website who've not taken any action, even if they've not filled out a form. And so we can help you to start leveraging the people who are already coming to your website and saying, I'm interested in something. I'm not ready to be sold yet, but I'm interested in something. It doesn't matter how you got that traffic in the first place. You could pay that, you could content, it doesn't matter how. So that's what the first thing we do. And then after we do that, the next thing we then do is, okay, how can we score how hot this lead is? So our pixel will do things like identify what we call hotness score. Basically, what were they doing on your website? Did they download something? Did they click many pages? How many minutes were they on your website? And then we're able to rank how hot that lead is. And then from there, there's a lot of options of what we can do. We can either do a retargeting ads campaign where we're saying these only individuals, Facebook, Google, TikTok, all of the platforms, show my ads to only the people who've shown some level of interest, which means that you're not having to spend a bazillion amount of money on ads. You're only focusing on a very small amount of individuals. And then from there, you can start putting people into nurturing sequences, email sequences, LinkedIn, email, all sorts of things. So that's our strategy really is. We drive traffic in any way, and we don't care too much how much we're spending, because we know that once they come to our website, we can identify them whether or not they make a decision. And then from there, we then put a retargeting ads to say Facebook or wherever else you want to retarget them. Usually we do a comprehensive strategy where we hit them everywhere they go on the internet, and there are tools we use to do that. And then we say, wherever you are, I'll keep showing case studies, testimonials, reasons why you should then take the next step if you've not converted, that is, if you've not booked a call or signed up for something. And then from there, it's all just a nurturing sequence really, and just nurturing them, building that trust until they convert. And that's really the strategy, which kind of helps you rethink things really, because you're not focused on how do I make sure that I convert every single person that from my ads. You're just no, I just want you to go to my website. That's just why I need you to go to my website, and then my tripwire picks you up, and then from there on, I just gotta be dripping you and nurturing you until you convert. So that is a radical way we think about it. Now, of course, there's a lot of technology in the background, AI, machine learning, that kind of does all of that, but fundamentally, that's a simple strategy we use.
So you are using Outreach Genius in your business?
We are, and it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. That is something that I don't think I find many founders, especially SaaS founders, being able to leverage their own tool in their business. So that is pretty fantastic.
Yes.
So now you talked earlier about how Bill Gates, Steve Jobs were inspirations for you. And you mentioned a few other people too, but what is one book or podcast or resource specifically that has profoundly impacted your perspective or your mindset as a founder?
Two books. I mean, there are a lot, but two books I'll share today. One is called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. I don't know if you're familiar with that
Repeat
book,
that
Naval
one.
Ravikant. The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. Almanac basically means the philosophy, the process of Naval Ravikant. He's the founder of AngelList. I don't know if you're familiar with that
Yes.
platform. So he's like a business philosopher, extremely wise gentleman. And I've read his book. Well, the book is basically a combination of all of his wisdom, basically on money, life, and everything in between. So for me, if you really want to learn fundamentally from first principles how to think about business, how to think about value, how to think about thriving in this economy. And one of the things he talked about in his book was we're living in a time of infinite leverage, meaning that the person with the highest leverage takes it all, and you need to figure out a way to find leverage in whatever it is you do. And just some of his ideas were just profound for me. That's like my business Bible. And I have that book. I'm always going back to it every single time. So that was one. The second book is The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. And for me, this is all about influence, persuasion, human psychology. In the world of business, half of it is your product, and the remaining half is just people. Whether it's your employees, whether it's investors, whether it's customers. You're trying to sell people something. You're trying to understand how people are thinking about what it is you're trying to sell to them, people's motivations. You're trying to drive people and inspire them to do something. So understanding psychology through the laws or the lens of power is really critical if you have real ambition or real if you have real reason to want to impact people to do something in certain ways. You have to understand their psychology, how people work, and the laws of power is something that I found extremely powerful. So for example, in the laws of power, it talks about the first law is uh, what was the first law again? The first law is something around do not take glory over the master. So something like, you can never, if you're under somebody, you always have to make sure that they don't feel threatened by you in
Mm,
some way. So it's like it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. It's just the way and the law of how humans work. So there are a lot of very interesting tricks and laws and strategies that I picked up from that book that are basically power laws, just the way you can get power and influence in the world. And you just have to like learn those laws so that number one, you don't get stabbed in the back yourself, but also number two, you can use those laws to get to your goals. Now of course, some people will talk about the ethics of it, but it's just a reality of the human psychology, and you have to learn it or it'll be used against you. So anyway, those two books stands out to me.
yes, yes. Okay. I'm definitely going to have to look up the first one. What a name.
I think you will enjoy it. The Almanac of Never Rabicon.
You can say it 4 times. The name is throwing me off. The name of the gentleman. Almanac I got, but the name I'm.
Naval, so Naval. Ravikant is Ravikant.
Okay. That's helpful. That's helpful. Awesome.
Yes.
So where
Another
can
one for the
people
loss of
find
power.
you on social, David?
Yes, so LinkedIn and Instagram and YouTube. So on LinkedIn, it's professional. I create a lot of content, or at least I try to. David Owasi, you can find me on there, and then on Instagram, same thing on David Owasi, and on YouTube, where I try and do some of my more longer form content at David Owasi across the board. I am active on Facebook and also sometimes Twitter, less so these days. But if you just go David Owasi, you'll find my socials.
And how often do you post on LinkedIn?
So I generally post a couple of times every week. Now that I'm sort of like in the hot zone of building our software, I've been more and more just focused on the work. But I generally would post like 2 to 4 times, an average of 3 times every week. So I'm typically sharing stuff on social media.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And everyone else, we'll see you next time.